Welcome back to InfoSec World 2025's CRA TV studio, live from Disney's Coronado Springs in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, a very proud member of the Security Weekly family of shows, and our high output team continues to bring you best in all kinds of information related to trying to handle this great cyber race. We're here trying to gear up CISOs and practitioners to really accelerate past threats. And here I'm joined with a true icon, Dr. Ron Ross, CEO of Ron Ross Secure and a NIST Fellow. Massive congratulations, Ron, on your legendary work. And also, I'm so thrilled for your keynote this morning. And I really like the title, Igniting Change. Is there any key point from your presentation that you really want to dive into right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here at this wonderful conference. I mean, it's so immense, all the different vendors that are here and all the different technical tracks and it's just a wealth of information. So I'm really excited to be a part of that. The keynote was interesting because we're kind of at a crossroads in cybersecurity now. We've got 40 to 50 years of experience, and we've done a tremendous amount of great work. There's lots of frameworks and controls and everything. I call that above the waterline work, organizations, what they do to build better programs. But there's a whole new field, what I call below the waterline, that's emerging. And this has to do with how do we develop a solid foundation below the waterline, which means the hardware, the software, the firmware, building better components, more trustworthy components, which can be integrated into our critical systems, which are going into everything from pacemakers to power plants. And that level of trustworthiness in those products and those components is critical because if they fail, we're talking about computers driving your critical braking systems in your car. We're talking about power plants where the lights go out. We're talking about water distribution systems, spacecraft, weapon systems. So solving that below the waterline problem is really the next generation where we have to focus on. That was kind of the message this morning during the keynote.
Now, when you are conceptualizing below the waterline efforts, does that overlap with the groundwork and frameworks that you pull from when you go, yes, these are the very solid ways to handle the onslaught of attacks coming from AI and LLMs being used so much more rapidly?
Well, the threat space continues to evolve, and so those kinds of attacks are going to continue to grow, and they're going to change over time because the adversaries are always looking for new ways to compromise our systems. But all the frameworks that we've used up to this point, whether it's the NIST risk management framework or the cybersecurity framework or any of the international frameworks, all of that is good work to help secure the basic organization. But we talk about a lot about below the waterline. I call it the black box. You have a smartphone or a tablet, you have a laptop computer, you don't really know what's going on inside that device. You know, you have the user interface, you interact with it, but all of that complexity within those devices is really where the adversary can tend to exploit. That's called attack surface. And the greater that becomes with all the innovation and everything we're bringing into the new enterprises with AI applications and all that, that increases the attack surface. And so we have to find ways to make those components more trustworthy. And that involves good engineering, good software engineering, software development. And we have a lot of history and just basic concepts that we can apply to make that a better situation.
Well, you're bringing to mind several things at once, so you'll have to forgive me because I have to go. Again, I'm trying to pull from what I know of your background and history and looking at this current moment and thinking about our CISO audience who are trying to engineer these high assurance systems. And what is something that you would go, you know, I can look back and see that this was a missed opportunity, and yet if it was used now, it's proactively useful.
Right, so CISOs are obviously at the organization level, so they pretty much are dependent upon whatever the industry provides to them. They're buying all the black boxes, whether it's a software application, AI applications, AI agent technology. They're buying network components. They're buying all the operating systems. They have to go to the commercial marketplace. So it's really imperative on industry to help the CISOs sleep better at night by letting them know, how did you go about building this product that you're trying to sell to me? what things did you do? Like, did you use memory-safe programming languages? Did you use certain design principles, least functionality, least privilege? Did you reduce the attack surface of the product that you're building so it makes it less susceptible to the cyber attacks? I don't want to have to deal with those on the customer side. And so the real takeaway is industry has to do more on their end, because every time they let a weakness or deficiency through that pipeline, it becomes a potential vulnerability that the customers have to deal with. And those vulnerabilities are growing by leaps and bounds because the attack surface is growing, because we just have an insatiable appetite for new technology. We're not going to stop innovating. We're not going to stop buying all those products. So at some point, industry has to step up and tell us, what are you doing to make your products more secure? That's a big challenge for them, because it doesn't always look at the bottom line. They want to sell products quickly to the marketplace.
Oh, absolutely.
Shareholders, stockholders, but this is not an issue that we can just let slide anymore, because everything they're building, all those computers that are going into these technologies, those are going into every one of our critical infrastructures, all 16 of those.
Right.
From communications to space, weapon systems, power plants, water distribution, transportation systems. And so a failure to secure that foundational aspect of the technology can have severe catastrophic effects long term. And we, the consumers, can't always deal with those complexities. That's why this is a big issue for industry. It's an issue of legislation and regulation potentially, but also letting industry still be innovative and creative so we can keep our economic advantage. And that actually ties to our national security interests as well. Yeah.
Now, in that, what is your take then on how effective are S-bombs, F-bombs, and any other bombs that are out there and being developed?
Well, the S-bomb technology, the secure bill of materials, basically, that's an attempt by the government to say to industry, we need to know more about what's inside the black box. Transparency, visibility. But the S-bombs that they've defined so far are very superficial. And we need to have a lot more information about what is the product supposed to do, how is it designed, what kind of a process did you use to develop your software? Did you bring in lots of information from code libraries? A lot of the times the developers are developing quickly through the life cycle, DevSecOps. They've got a quick life cycle. And they're using a lot of open source code sometimes.
Right.
And they're bringing a lot of code libraries. In those code libraries or the open source code, there could be malicious code that comes in from that aspect, and they get into the development process of the system. So there are some industry players now that are addressing that problem, basically shining the light on the process, the concepts, the procedures that are used by our tech industry to produce everything that you see here on the floor today and more, the general space of technology. And so there's a lot of movement in the S-bomb area, but it's just starting initial. We're just scratching the surface in that area now. We need a lot more.
Well, absolutely. And I'm curious because you're discussing so wholeheartedly about securing the components, and if it's not through the current structure of S-bombs, F-bombs, and other bombs that are available, then is there like a 3 or 4 word descriptor for what you feel will help secure the components more readily?
Well, I think overall we need greater visibility and transparency into what these products are doing inside. Now, that doesn't mean that every consumer, the consumer's not going to be experts in the technology. They don't, they're not building code, they're not designing integrated circuits, but it's important for companies to tell the consumers what process they did use and all the things that we know as an industry reduce the susceptibility to cyber attacks and critical failures. It's kind of like when you walk down the cereal aisle in the food store, there's 100 different choices, and you can read on the label on the side of the box. You look at things like sugar, carbohydrates. Of course, cereals have a lot of that. But a lot of people look at the food labels now and make better choices on healthier foods to eat. We kind of need the same thing in the cybersecurity business. We need clear, concise labels that have been vetted by industry and our standards organizations to say, if you follow these procedures or if you do these kinds of things, then you're going to probably have a more trustworthy product. Now, it's not perfect, but this is going to be a journey getting greater transparency and visibility is going to be a long-standing process to get to that point. But there were times, I remember times when there were no labels in any products in the food stores. You just walk down there and pick whatever looked good. And now we've seen an evolution. Automobile safety, the same way. My first car barely had a seatbelt. Now we have seatbelts, airbags, steel reinforced doors. We have drop-down engines, sensors everywhere. And so the combination of regulation and the industry wanting to bring safer automobiles to you as a consumer, that's a good model to follow for the tech industry now. We're at that point because nobody wants their brakes to fail at 60 miles an hour. And nobody wants a company to build a car without brakes today. I mean, it's just not, it's unthinkable,
True.
But yet we're fielding all this wonderful tech stuff without brakes, without any guardrails in many cases. And that's not a good place to be in. We have to do better.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree, and I'm glad for all of our safety and guidelines that have developed to really further what our goal purpose is, even within cybersecurity. Security is still the health and wellness of individuals, of the human. The human factor is what we are going to secure.
Right.
And it sounds like you're very focused on the adaptability of the tech industry to react, respond, and even forecast what's coming and is useful. You just participated in the Women in Cyber Summit here this morning.
Yeah, great forum.
Was it?
Yeah.
Please tell me more on that.
Well, this is one that when I got the opportunity to be on the panel, I was the only male on the panel.
Okay.
And of course, when in that picture, when you guys posted that of the panel and I saw the women's panel, there was me up there. I said, well, I got to explain why I'm here. Well, the reason I was really excited about being part of that is because our industry, we have a significant shortage in talented people to solve these very difficult and challenging problems. And so we're always looking for new talent. And I've been very fortunate in my career at NIST to have some of the great women in key leadership roles. From our NIST director, we've had 2 NIST directors that were female. Our lab director, Sita Furlani, was obviously female, and then our division chief for many years, Donna Dotson. And when it came time for me to retire and to pick somebody to follow on in my footsteps, one of my colleagues, Vicki Pelletieri, who I've known for years, she stepped right into that role. So I have kind of been around strong, smart, competent women my whole life, but that's not the case in all organizations. There's kind of a culture in our industry, it's still largely male dominated. Now, I don't know why that is. It could be just a cultural thing, but we need to encourage young women to get into the STEM sciences, and if you don't like the STEM area, there are lots of positions in cyber, policy related things. Wherever you have talent, we need you to come into this space because this problem set is so difficult and challenging. We need all different kinds of perspectives, looking at the problem, bringing in new perspectives, new ideas, and that comes from diversity of ideas and people. So that's why I was so excited, and it was a really great panel. We had a Q&A session, and the audience was really engaged. They were asking, we had to cut off the questions because we ran out of time, but they were all about it today, and that kind of energy. And I have to say, I was trying to count the number of men that showed up to that. There was probably 25% of the audience that were male.
Good. Okay.
So that's a great thing, and they're going to do more of those over time. This is just the initial seed that was planted, and that form's going to grow, I hope, over time. So.
I'm very happy to hear that, and I know from my own personal journey, it is the adaptability and integrity of so many of security practitioners that I have seen that it really is a very inclusive space compared to some others. And I am thankful that not only are there so many mentors like yourself and teachers and people who are way showers and who
Right.
have developed such phenomenal depth of know-how and skill and dedication, and yet I personally hold that within the security communities, there are a beautiful and hardcore advancing dedication to progress that transcends all other barriers.
I totally agree. And setting aside just the women's issue, but just the general community itself, the first thing I do, and anytime I speak anywhere, is I thank all the men and women who have been doing the heavy lifting in this business for decades.
Yeah.
It is incredibly
yes.
difficult work. You get up every day, and if you're a CISO or an ISSO, first time there's a problem or a breach, they usually point to you and blame you for that. And I've always said, no, it's a senior leadership problem. They're just working for you, and they need to take that responsibility at the highest levels of any organization. But the dedication of the men and women of our profession is unmatched. I mean, it's highly stressful. The technology has been racing forward. Every time they think they have a good lockdown solution, they get a new component, new application, new person comes in. So their world is constantly changing, and they have to be very smart, capable, be tenacious, and be able to take those constant blows every day. And that contributes to the stress level. And that's why you see a lot of CISOs, the turnover rate is fairly high. It's hard work, and they're underappreciated. We need to pay them more and appreciate them more. And I never let them forget that, because I have the easy part of the problem. They have the tough part. Yeah.
Well, I want to express appreciation to you right now. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for bringing your fire and heart and passion to this discussion, and to all who are joining virtually. Please make sure to check out Dr. Ron Ross's keynote and all of his other proliferation of information that you have put out over the years. And for our coverage of InfoSec World 2025, please be sure to visit securityweekly.com/ISW. I'm Mandy Logan, and thank you for joining us.